WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisCI to 44321.
Lisa Rubrich of Sun Prairie is the Republican candidate for the 48th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Lisa Rubrich, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, thank you for participating in our candidate interview. What is your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
Well, my initial reason was that I was tired of seeing a blank space in the Republican column in my district, so I just decided I'd give people a choice. But since starting this, some issues have come into focus. Crime, cost of living, and housing issues are pretty much the big focus of the people that I've been talking to.
So if you were elected, what's an example of a bill that you would prioritize introducing?
Well, I know when you're a junior person, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of opportunities, but I can listen. So I think that we should definitely eliminate some red tape so that we can build more housing. Rent is through the roof. I've got 3 kids who have been launched, and they're paying exorbitant rents, and I don't see why, since there's so much being built. So I kind of want to peek around the curtain and see, how does this work and why rents are so high. I know some of it is inflation and the cost of transport and us not producing enough oil, but I know at a state level we don't produce oil, so we can't control that.
So if you're elected, you'd be entering the legislature during a biennial budget year. Mm-hmm. The state has more than a $3 billion surplus. What would be your top 2 priorities for the use of that surplus?
Well, I think most of it should probably go back to the people who paid it in the first place. But I think we could invest more in our technical colleges. I do believe that students should probably start their educations at the technical college level, smaller classrooms, but also we could invest in the trades. And that could be one of the reasons why housing is so expensive, because we don't have enough electricians, plumbers, welders, and I think that if we invest early, maybe in some high school programs, and have them ready when they come out, they don't necessarily need to think that they have to go to a 4-year college. And the students who want to go to a 4-year college, if they start in the technical college arena and then move on to the 4-year college, it'll cut their costs down.
You talk about giving money back to Wisconsinites. Are you talking about tax cuts? Is that part of a priority for you?
I think that's reasonable to discuss, because if there's a surplus, what's the surplus from? Is it from the federal government or is it from local taxes? That makes a difference. If it's from local people from Wisconsin, then they should get some of that money back. But if it's from the federal level, then it should be spread out a little more evenly. But we do need to focus on education, keeping the people who graduate here, living here, and you can't keep them here if the rent is so high.
K-12 education, leading issue for many voters. What is your campaign's top priority for K-12 education?
Going back to the basics: reading, writing, arithmetic, science, math. If kids can't read and kids can't do math, they can't do budget when they get older. So they're not going to get too far in this world. And I think we're focusing too much of our resources on other things besides getting kids ready to be adults.
So you would be focusing funding toward those basics of academics?
The basic academics, yes.
You mentioned technical colleges. What does the future of the overall higher education system in Wisconsin look like? 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, we've heard of closures there. Are there any changes that the legislature needs to focus on in that system?
I think we need to focus on, if you're talking about, so for instance, UW-Madison, they had this huge endowment, and yeah, we should fund higher education, but if they've got this huge endowment, why don't they put some of that back towards what they want to build? So I'm not, silly enough to know that I know all the numbers or all the details of any of this yet, but I do want to pay attention and find out whether there is something the legislature can do to kind of rein in some excessive spending, perhaps, and put towards a map towards the future, so that the students can get a good education and not necessarily, I went to college. It was a cinder block dorm room. I didn't need, the Starbucks at the corner of the dorm. There's some cuts that could be made, I think, and I think those types of things build character in kids. They don't necessarily need a 5-star apartment to live in.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it? You talked a little bit about technical education.
Yeah. I think, there's a lot of states that do start that kind of education in kind of, diverged paths in high school. And I think there are certain kids that really know what they want to do. And if you allow them to get, paid or pay for the education while they're in high school, they're a step ahead. And I think we're also, we should look at also building perhaps another medical school, because we're short on doctors, primary care doctors. We need to, workforce development, I think we need to just bring development back to Wisconsin, and one way to do that is to lower taxes for corporations. Everybody says corporations make too much money, they need to pay their fair share, but in reality they're paying, and if everybody who works there pays their taxes, the state gets the money back. So it's important to kind of make it an even playing field, where you make it comfortable for companies to make money, and you make it a good work environment for people who want to live in Wisconsin, which is a great place to live. You only have to go a few miles, and you're in the green space, as I was this morning, picking seeds.
Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. These investments also provide an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
I think that depends on whether we have the workforce here to begin with. You can't lock in a mandatory hiring requirement if you don't have the workers to do the job. So I think if you're going to be building infrastructure, you got to get the work done. And if you don't have the people to do it, you got to hire from out of state. So that's probably a yes-no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this, and what do you think should be done about it?
They would also be denied work comp, I would imagine, too. I think that if you're going to be building in Wisconsin for Wisconsin, that everybody should have a level playing field. People who are hiring off the books are, I don't want to say cheating, but it's cheating. It's just not a level playing field. So yeah, everybody should be employees, if not, have the same benefits as everybody else that is competing for those jobs.
You mentioned this as a priority earlier. Affordable rental housing is an issue across the state. Some have proposed government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others that argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability, rent control or building more rental housing?
I don't know a whole lot about the subject, but while I was canvassing, I did talk to a guy who was a builder of apartments, And he said basically the cost of building apartments has gone up so much that that's why the rents are so high. However, I don't necessarily believe that they should be as high as they are. So I'm wondering myself, who owns the apartment buildings? Is it just one or two companies that are building, and then keeping the rents high? I don't know. I don't think that artificially imposing rent controls has worked in other places, and I do believe in a free market economy. If you have enough supply, then the rents should come down, and those that are more expensive, would have to lower the rents.
Medical systems facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures of that type?
Well, I work in the healthcare system, so I see this every single day. And one of the problems we have is a lack of practitioners. I think that there recently was a push to let nurse practitioners practice independent of doctors, and the doctors, of course, push back. I don't know that for primary care that would make a difference, but I think we need to get the nurse practitioners in the rural communities, even in urban communities, so that we can get the pressure off of some of these healthcare systems, because there's just not enough providers. And so, and that goes to, maybe we should build an osteopathic medical school here. We don't have one in Wisconsin. We should push, more money towards maybe grants towards letting nurses become nurse practitioners. A lot of them get some buyback from their employers, but I'm sure there's some that don't. And if they could get more education and become nurse practitioners, then I think that's going to kind of ease the burden of everyone.
Mental health care is also a growing concern for Wisconsinites and concern for both state and county budgets. In your district, what are you hearing on this issue, and how would you address mental health care?
Okay, mental health care also is, I recognize that there's a problem. There's not enough practitioners to supply the counseling. We should be able to import counselors from other states. If they've passed a test in another state, maybe standardize a test in all the states, then counselors would be willing, who want to come to Wisconsin would not have to jump through that additional hurdle. And then you can compete adequately for the amount of people who are out there are probably looking for a job. There's not enough psychiatrists. When you have mental health issues, then you have potential increase in crime, because some of the mental health issues are not going to be addressed. And then that puts a burden on the criminal justice system, and you're forcing the prisons and the jails to handle people in crisis. And that's just not where those people belong.
Transitioning to abortion policy, how should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion? Do you have a position on whether there should be different limits and exceptions?
First of all, I love babies. I love babies. Everybody should love babies. We should want to have babies. We should give women support to have their babies. That being said, I do believe in personal liberty. Women should have the right to choose whether they want to not have their child. There is currently a 20-week limit on abortion, and that's halfway through the pregnancy. I think that's reasonable. I think there should also always be a exception for the life of the mother. There should always be exceptions for rape and incest, but I think those would fall into the 20-week rule. Other than that, I'm an individualist, and I don't want to tell anybody else what to do with their health care.
Transitioning to transportation, what are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is that these needs are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Roads are expensive. I learned that through the town of Burke supervisor position I held. So I think in our neck of the woods, the biggest thing is that we, until recently, had no buses. So unless you had a car, you weren't living in some Prairie or Burke or any of the communities. And I don't know if that was by design or not, but I see the buses now. So we've got new bus stops going up. We've got some buses running around the hood. And I think that's basically because they built out the west side of some Prairie, which is good. But I think that the buses need to be connected so that people can get to work downtown. They don't have to take their car, which is good. Roads themselves, though, that's a tricky one because now they're pushing all these EVs, and how are you going to pay for the roads if everybody's not paying
the gas tax?
The gas tax, right. So I know I've had hybrids for a long time, and I have to pay a little extra every year for the privilege of having a hybrid. I don't know if that is enough to cover the roads, but I know roads are expensive. So we need to keep up with the roads, whether that means putting a toll at the border for people who come in. I don't know if I'm a fan of a toll for the people who live here, but I don't mind having other people pay for our roads.
PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
I think that we do need to identify how it's getting into the water system and be proactive in making sure it doesn't. There are other things that get in the water system too. In the town of Burke, where I live, we're pretty much well in septic, so that makes a difference what's going into the water system. We don't necessarily have the treatment plants that take care of the water before we drink it. That being said, the water's good. It's all been tested. So I just think we need to be proactive. Now, there are a lot of other things that probably should be checked, but there's a lot of big industry that's probably behind some of the lobbying that prevents some of this information from getting out there. So that's another reason I'm running, is to learn and see what's being wheeled and dealed behind the curtain.
We're coming to the end of our interview. I'd like to ask you, how do you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
Well, I think I'm not about, promising, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that. I believe in personal liberties. I believe in protecting the public. I like clean environment. I like clean air. I like supporting public schools. The public school teachers all need a raise. I could go there. But I don't know too much about him. I just know that he's only lived here like 5 years. I know he was born here, but he's only lived here like 5 years. So I've been here 23 years. I also was born here. Kept hopping the border a little bit. Would rather stay here. So again, he's an attorney. I don't know too much about him. I know there was some sort of scandal in Kansas or something about a reading program, but people can look that up.
Last question. If you had a magic wand and could use it over the state capitol around one issue that brings people together and could be resolved, what would that issue be?
Oh, I think it's the divisiveness. People can't seem to talk across the aisle anymore, and even within a party. I talk to people who have been in the legislature politics for a long time, and it's been like this for a long time. I think people should be able to talk to the other party, and when the other party has a good idea, bring it forward to do good for the people. But I'm not afraid of people telling me. They won't tell me what to do.
Well, thank you, Lisa Rubrich, who is the Republican candidate from Sun Prairie for the 48th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Lisa Rubrich, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.